still remember the exact shade of blue they painted over my walls the day after they forced me out. Seabreeze sky. Ava's favorite. The same color that buried every trace of my childhood as they turned my bedroom into her personal Pilates studio. "You're 19 now, Zoe," Dad said, not even glancing up from his tablet. "Ava needs the space to train. She's got nationals coming." Mom was already stuffing my things into black trash bags. Not boxes. Bags. Like my life was just clutter to be tossed. My science fair ribbons, AP awards, and Python manuals all crumpled beneath leotards and yoga mats. All sacrificed for my 17-year-old sister's fitness career. "But I just started my program at UCLA," I said, stunned. "Where am I supposed to go?" "The basement has a futon," Mom replied, tugging down my robotics trophies from the shelves. "Or get a place. You're grown now, aren't you?" An adult, barely. I was juggling a full load in computer engineering while working nights at a food truck. And the college savings fund? Quietly drained over the last 2 years to pay for Ava's sports therapy, private coaches, and endless competition fees. That night, I slept in the basement, surrounded by silverfish and stacked holiday decor. Through the vents, I could hear Ava's instructor cheering her on upstairs in what used to be my room. The next morning, I called the only person who ever made me feel seen. My grandfather's sister, Aunt Louise. "Come stay with me," she said without a second thought. "There's space upstairs in Harold's old office. I'd love the company." Aunt Louise had always noticed me. While my parents cheered for Ava's fitness milestones, she saw the quiet hours I spent coding, fixing neighbors' Wi-Fi, building apps. She never said much, but she saw everything. "You've got his fire," she told me one night. We were sitting in the room that had become my sanctuary, surrounded by old engineering diagrams and dusty ledgers. "Harold started with one duplex, just wanted to help folks live better." She reached under the bed and pulled out a heavy metal lockbox. "He left this in my name, but he'd want you to have it." Inside was the deed to a small apartment complex near downtown San Diego. Nothing flashy, but structurally sound and cash-flowing. "It's yours now," she said, placing the papers in my lap. "Build something from it." And I did. Make something of it. Weather was 10 years ago. 10 years of late nights and early mornings. 10 years of studying real estate law between classes, negotiating leases during lunch breaks, fixing plumbing on weekends. 10 years of turning one modest apartment building into a growing real estate portfolio. First 5 buildings, then 10. Then a network of high-end properties across San Diego. Now, at 29, I stood behind the mirrored glass of my newest luxury complex, the Louise, named for the woman who first believed in me. I watched in silence as my parents sat stiffly in the leasing office below, filling out our rental application. They looked smaller than I remembered. Dad's expensive polo couldn't mask the slump in his shoulders, and Mom's pearls couldn't hide the desperation behind her eyes. After years of pouring money into Ava's career, nutritionists, trainers, brand consultants, there had been no fame, no return. The Pilates dream had collapsed, their savings along with it. "Ms. Wen," my property manager's voice came over the intercom. "The Walkers are asking about the penthouse suite." "Let them finish the paperwork," I replied, smoothing the fabric of my navy power suit. "I'll handle the interview personally." Through the glass, I watched Mom pause on the income requirement page, her brow furrowed. Dad whispered something under his breath. I knew the numbers would push them to the edge of their finances, but this wasn't just any building. It was the most coveted address downtown. 3 months deposit, Dad muttered. What is this, Beverly Hills? If only he knew whose signature was on that policy. I stepped into my office, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the bay, art curated by local talent, and at its center, my late Uncle Harold's mahogany desk, fully restored. My hand rested on the worn leather corner of the portfolio he once gave Aunt Louise. My lucky charm. From the hallway, soft classical music floated in, ironically, Ava's old competition track. I smiled. "Send them in." The door opened with a soft hiss. The space radiated success and elegance, with every detail chosen to reflect quiet power. "Mr. and Mrs. Walker," my assistant announced, holding the door. They stepped in. Mom entered first, her carefully sculpted smile flickering as she took in the view. Her eyes scanned the desk, the windows, then landed on me. She froze. "Zoe?" she whispered, voice cracking. I stood slowly. "Welcome to my building." She'd probably gotten her hair done at that overpriced La Jolla salon, ones they couldn't really afford anymore. Dad followed her in, his confident stride just a beat too slow as he took in the room. I saw the flicker in his eyes, the mental math of square footage, custom furnishings, and the kind of view reserved for top-tier developers. For once, he looked small. Neither of them recognized me at first. Of course they didn't. The Zoe they knew wore thrift store jeans and worked graveyard shifts at the taco stand off El Cajon. This Zoe wore a tailored Veronica beard blazer and had a reserved parking spot next to her private elevator. "Please, have a seat," I said, gesturing toward the velvet chairs across from my desk. They sat without hesitation. Amazing how the balance of power can shift in 10 years. "We're very interested in the penthouse," Mom began, voice polished like she was still working the country club committee. "Money isn't an issue." I glanced down at their rental application and took my time. "I see you're currently in Oakwood Heights," I said mildly. "That's quite a transition. From a 5-bedroom home in Coronado to a 1,600 square foot unit." "We're downsizing," Dad said quickly. "Empty nesters." "Empty nesters," I repeated. "So both daughters moved out?" "Our youngest pursued dance," Mom jumped in, rehearsed as ever. "She trained in Paris, London, all the top programs." "And your older daughter?" I asked, lifting my gaze slowly. "She left early, didn't she?" That pause, that familiar tone, clipped and dismissive. "She moved out some time ago." "To the garage," I said, voice calm. "If I remember correctly." Silence. Then, recognition. Mom's expression cracked. "Zoe?" Her voice wavered. "Hello, Mother." I leaned back, folding my hands. "Father? Has it been 8 years since our last tense holiday brunch?" Dad straightened. "You own this? This building?" I chuckled softly. "No, I own the entire block." Donnie's widened. "The Louise is one of 30 properties in my portfolio. You'd know that if either of you had asked what happened to your disappointment after you cleared out her room." "We didn't throw you out," Mom whispered. "We just needed space for Ava's training, I remember," I said. "How's that going? Still teaching reformer Pilates to retirees?" The jab landed. Mom flinched. Dad clenched his jaw. "Now," I said, sliding the application forward, "let's discuss your eligibility. Unfortunately, your income doesn't quite meet our penthouse requirements." If you felt that moment of power shift deep in your chest, when silence spoke louder than revenge, hit subscribe and stay with me, because what happens next will change everything. "Your credit score is concerning," I said, tapping the folder lightly. "And your references?" I let the silence linger, watching them shift in their seats. "Well, let's just say they weren't exactly glowing." "Zoe," Dad began, slipping into his courtroom cadence, that lawyer voice he used when cornered in negotiations. "About what happened?" "Don't," I cut in, holding up my hand. "This isn't about the past. This is a business meeting." I slid their application across the desk. "You're applying to rent the penthouse in my building. And I'm telling you, you don't qualify." "But surely you could make an exception," Mom said, her voice soft, desperate. "We're family." That word hung in the room like smog. Thick, bitter, inescapable. "Family," I echoed, pulling open a drawer. From inside, I lifted a crumpled black plastic garbage bag, the same kind they'd used when they packed up my childhood without warning or care. "Recognize this?" I asked. Mom's face fell. Her gaze dropped. "I kept it," I said, "not because of what you did, but because of what I promised myself I'd never become." I set it gently beside me. I built this company from nothing. While you were buying a reformer classes and paying for marketing shoots, I was sleeping on Aunt Louise's floor, working triple shifts, finishing my degree at night, coding property software by hand on borrowed laptops. Dad looked away, jaw clenched. And now, after years of silence, you want me to bend my standards? Because we share DNA? Please, Dad said, the steel gone from his voice. We need this apartment. The house is gone. The practice? It's not what it used to be. I stared at them for a long moment, then slowly reached into my drawer again. There's one option, I said at last. They both straightened, hopeful. A smaller unit just opened, 4th floor, 2 bedrooms, modest but clean. Rent fits your budget, and the credit screening's less strict. They exchanged a look, pride battling reality. It's a lovely unit, I added, conveniently located next to the building's service corridor. Dad's eyes narrowed, the realization landed. The apartment backed onto the garage. They took it. I watched through my window as they hauled their downsized life into the service elevator. Fewer boxes, quieter movements, no chauffeur, no applause. Poetic, really. Ava showed up 3 days later, pushing past my assistant with all the urgency of someone used to getting her way. How could you put them next to the garage? She snapped, posture still poised, though the grace of her Pilates days was more memory than reality. They're our parents. I looked up from my laptop. Gone were the designer leggings and high-end accessories. Now she wore discount store slacks and a wrinkled blouse. Her sleek Instagram-worthy bun had been replaced by a practical ponytail. Hello, Ava, I said calmly. Still practicing in my old room? She flinched. That's not fair. No, I said, closing my laptop. It wasn't fair. Just like it wasn't fair when they drained my college fund for your career. Or when they told me to sleep in the garage while they redecorated my bedroom for your reformer machine. She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the floor. Didn't ask them to do that, she said, though her voice held less certainty now. Didn't you? I walked over to the window, looking down at the afternoon buzz of downtown San Diego. Every time you needed a new mat, a new coach, a private retreat, did you ever stop to wonder where the money came from? Did it ever occur to you why your sister was pulling night shifts while studying code in parking lots? Ava joined me by the window, quiet now. I was 16, she said finally. I thought you were just built different, stronger, fierce. I didn't realize they were lifting one of us up by holding the other one down. Tears gathered at the edges of her eyes. And now look, she whispered, you own half the skyline, and I'm leading toddler stretch classes at a strip mall studio. There's nothing wrong with teaching, I said, surprising myself with the softness in my tone. At least it's honest work. And you love it. Do I? She gave a bitter laugh. Or is it just the only thing I was ever allowed to do? It was always Ava the athlete, never Ava anything else. We stood there in silence. 2 women raised in the same house, molded into opposites. I have a proposition, I said at last. The Louis sponsors a community arts initiative. We need someone to launch the dance division, teach, develop the curriculum, learn the admin side, build something real. She blinked. You trust me with that? It's not charity, I said firmly. You'll earn it. But I don't believe in sacrificing one sister to build the other. It's time we both get to grow, for ourselves. She nodded, voice breaking. Then let's start over. The next few months brought changes none of us had planned for. Mom and Dad slowly adjusted to apartment life. I'd sometimes catch Mom gazing wistfully at the upper floors of the Louise, her eyes lingering on the penthouse balcony like a memory she couldn't quite touch. Dad, once a high-powered attorney chasing corporate retainers, began taking on small neighborhood cases, pro bono work, tenant disputes, immigration filings. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time in years, I saw him doing something that felt honest. Ava surprised us all. She threw herself into the community arts program with a kind of urgency I hadn't expected. She wasn't just teaching dance. She was nurturing confidence, helping kids who'd never stepped foot in a studio discover joy in their movement. Within months, she'd moved into a simple 2-bedroom unit in one of my mid-range buildings. She insisted on paying full rent, "This one's mine," she said firmly, "all of it." As for Grandma Louise, she watched it all unfold with that same sharp, serene wisdom she always carried. When I handed her the keys to the penthouse I'd been begging her to accept for years, she finally said yes. "Your grandfather would be proud," she told me one night over grilled salmon and red wine. "Not just of the business you've built, but the grace with which you've done it." "Even putting Mom and Dad next to the garage?" I asked, half grinning. She chuckled. "Especially that. Sometimes people need a taste of their own choices to understand them fully." 1 year after their move, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a letter, handwritten in Dad's clean, lawyerly cursive. A full-page apology. No excuses, no spin, just acknowledgement. Tucked inside was a check, repayment for my college fund, with interest. I framed the letter. The check I returned, with a note asking them to invest it into Ava's performing arts program instead. Some debts are better repaid through legacy, not cash. That Christmas, for the first time in 10 years, we gathered in Grandma Louise's penthouse. It was awkward at first, decade-old tension hanging like dust in the corners. But something shifted. Dad asked about my newest green tech project. Mom offered to help Ava plan the arts showcase. The wounds didn't disappear, but we stopped picking at them. Later that evening, standing on the balcony, I looked out over the city. I thought of the girl in the garage, bitter, relentless, set on revenge. She'd made it. But somewhere along the way, proving them wrong had evolved into proving herself right. Ava joined me, arms folded loosely. "Thank you," she said, "not just for the program, for showing me there's more than one way to dance." I smiled. "Looks like we're all learning some new steps." 2 years later, I stood at the podium for the grand opening of the Wynn Creative Center, our family's boldest venture yet. Once a dilapidated warehouse, it was now a sprawling facility with studios, tech labs, and collaborative spaces. Ava led the arts division. I ran the STEM and entrepreneurship programs. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, no longer center stage, but finally present. "They used to call me the girl from the garage," I told the crowd. But what they didn't know was that the garage was just the beginning. That night, we gathered in what used to be my garage room, now transformed into a legacy wall, lined with photos, awards, and blueprints. Grandma Louise raised her glass. "To the garage," she said, eyes twinkling, "where greatness begins." If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside to make room for someone else's dreams, drop a comment. Tell me which moment hit you hardest. I want to hear your stories too. And if you believe that healing doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing to build something better, subscribe. Not just for me, but for every girl who's ever been told the garage was the end of her story. It wasn't. It was just the start. My advice? Don't let their definition of you become your truth. Build your own future, even if it starts in the quietest, most unlikely place.